In the wake of the recent mass shootings, I'm once again thinking of the incredible human drive for attention. Not only are these shooters striking out against the world in one last-ditch attempt to be noticed, but so is every pundit and political figure who can find a microphone. Everybody is desperate to feel important these days. Think about your very first act on the planet. Your first act was to scream for attention. If the delivering doctor swatted your pink little butt, you went off like a siren, and everybody knew you were healthy and strong. Yay, the baby can yell and holler. This one will do fine. Nothing, and I do mean nothing, is more important to a person than to be noticed and accepted by other people. That's the key to survival right there. If you have value to the tribe will have your back. In the wild, we would have grown up knowing everybody around us. Our little tribal band would have been like an extended family. Every adult within reach would have counseled us and disciplined us too. We would have had plenty of attention whether we asked for it or not. Our brains are built to expect and rely on a near constant stream of input from other humans. There is a ton of information in casual social interaction. We are constantly learning from each other. As children growing up, we pattern ourselves on our parent of the same sex. But later on, as we become more self-aware, we need the input of adults of our same sex who are not our parents. In the life of a village, this was automatic. Nobody had to think much about it or go searching for it. Adults were always around and visibly doing the things that gave them status in the group, and kids were always watching. But let's focus on boys. If a boy thought that his dad, the basket maker, was hopelessly lame, he could go hang out with that cool older guy who made those badass arrowheads. He could ask questions and get answers. He could pick up pointers about life and hear the bawdy guy stuff that his own dad would never talk about. And he could begin to get the hang of performing valued work under the watchful eyes of a man with whom he had no troublesome history. When I was a kid, my older brother worked on cars. My folks let him take over the garage, and soon a lot of guys with hot rods showed up. Our house became a car guy hangout. You could hear the sounds of headers and radical cams a block away. These older guys let me tag along when my old brother wanted nothing to do with me. It wasn't that I didn't have a good father. It was just that I was starting to rebel against him so that I could eventually break away and become my own man. The amount of male attention I needed was distributed across my dad, my older brother, and at least 3 of his friends at various times. It's hard to describe the thrill a 12-year-old boy gets when a super cool 19-year-old guy says to him, "Hey kiddo, want to go for a test drive with me?" It's just as hard to describe what is lacking in a boy's life when he has no consistent male role model at home and no cool older dudes who will take him under their wings from time to time. Trust me, there is a hole in that kid's life. Every time Bob Estrada asked me to sit behind the wheel of his 409 Chevy Impala and pump the brakes or turn over the ignition while he did something under the hood, he was teaching me man skills, and not just mechanical skills. Every time Bob Ebert took me on a run to the parts store with him, I picked up a few more tips about girls and how to fit in with guys my age, and also when not to play that game. I didn't know it, but I had a committee of men in my life who were all conspiring to make a decent guy out of me. And I still turned out screwed up, because even then, the feminist culture was pushing manhood out the back door. The information I'd been picking up was priceless, but I was not allowed to apply it in a world that was suddenly hypersensitive to the demands of feminists. Popular culture was teaching me that manhood was a problem, and that women expected men to be subservient and apologetic. It took me decades to shake that off and start being an unapologetic male. When I did that, I was attacked by both the feminists running the left-wing world I then lived in and their tightly controlled feminist men. I have direct experience with what happens to a guy when he realizes that he is not a factory second with problematic wiring. I caught a lot of shit, but I also came to life. Christina Hoff Sommers, the best friend boys have in this world, quotes psychologist Michael Thompson as saying that in schools, boys are treated like defective girls. Exactly. The proper influencing of boys by girls and women has turned to a shame-based programming of boys by girls and women. Is it any wonder that young men skip the courting ritual in favor of online porn in a darkened bedroom? That they spend thousands of hours of their prime youth sitting on couches with a controller while their video game avatars kick ass and get hot babes? Is it really any wonder that some small number of them turn their frustrations into vengeance on the world? Look, boys are not girls. Men are not women, in spite of all the left-wing efforts to deny that basic truth. Boys are filled with a need to get attention from other males. Somewhere along the line, acting up was recast as acting out. The old saying, boys will be boys, went from a loving accommodation of boyhood to a statement about the basic problem of boys and men. Masculinity has gone from an admired trait to a pathology in need of treatment and eventual eradication. Here's the key. The job of civilization was always to expand masculinity to include empathy, manners, and an almost auto-response willingness to protect women and the weak. Rites of passage introduced boys to the codes of honor that would set them on a life path that channeled their aggression into hard work and, when needed, acts of courage and even heroism. This was done by men who had willingly sworn themselves into lives of service to their families and communities. These men are now largely gone from the picture. Nowadays, boys lack for any sort of consistent older male attention. How many of the mass shooters we've had are older men with children and a stable home life? None of them. How many are young? Almost all. How many of these lacked proper adult male role models? Again, almost all of them. These days, we supervalue girls and we undervalue boys. The culture that has been created by second-wave feminists is not so much pro-woman as anti-man. Dubious concepts such as rape culture, toxic masculinity, and the patriarchy are accepted without much thought by at least half the country. 80% of the kids who think they need to switch genders are boys trying to become girls. That's not an interesting statistic. That's a canary in the coal mine. People need attention, and the transgender craze is almost entirely based on that desire. Boys know by now that their future as men will be confusing at best and untenable at worst. They get to thinking that maybe growing up to be a woman is the solution. And the anti-male feminists of the left are all too happy to prepare them for being neutered when they hit legal age. Listen, all of the laws that we live by are designed to limit the aggressive and/or slothful behaviors of males. All of the rules in the classroom and the schoolyard as well. The job is to civilize boys enough that they will gladly spend their lives in the kinds of cooperative activities that, let's face it, come more naturally to females. The culture of schools is mostly a female culture. 90% of teachers in public primary schools are women. A boy can go all the way through grade school and even high school and never have a single male teacher. And these days, after feminism and the welfare state rejiggered society, almost half of boys have no male role models at home either. As tragic as the mass shootings are, far more lives are lost to gang violence. What is a gang anyway? A gang is a bunch of fatherless boys trying to father other fatherless boys. Male bonding without the guidance of responsible adults. Rites of passage based on pointless acts of courage and a shallow understanding of honor. There is nothing psychologically wrong with gang members. The problem is boys trying to develop without the male development infrastructure that is now missing from so many lives. We're recording this episode on 9/11, the 18th anniversary of the attacks that shook our nation. I'm no expert on the perpetrators of that horror, but I guarantee you this. The young men who murdered thousands on that day did so in a twisted attempt to gain the approval of older men. Religion was just the excuse and the framework. To them, Allah is the ultimate alpha male. The radical Muslim terrorists who recruited them promised them rich rewards in paradise and the undying respect of other men here on earth. The problem with boys is everybody's problem. You can't deny or ignore male nature without reaping the whirlwind in one way or another. It's the job of every adult male to take whatever wisdom he has and hand it off to a boy, to give him a little attention, a little encouragement, some accurate and detailed praise, and when needed, some gentle but unequivocal pushback. This simple grassroots process is how civilization was accomplished. It's necessary to a law-abiding life that is also adventurous and satisfying. The path we're on now won't destroy civilization outright. It will just gradually rob it of its vitality while continuing to produce disaffected outliers who self-destruct in private or in a mall with a gun. Thanks for listening to my take on this. I'm looking forward to hearing all of yours in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.